back to the Underdogs in Africa podcast. This is episode 5. Today, this is more of a personal journey. It's a personal story, and I've got a guest here who's actually very close to my heart. I often talk about my journey in payments when I started my career, and I often refer to a handful of people that gave me opportunities, opened up doors, and really supported me through that progression story. Also, if you think back 10 years ago, even longer, about Fintech in Africa, women in this industry, diversity and inclusion, there were no females in boardrooms except one, and her name was Drisha. We're in an undisclosed location today, shooting this podcast. But yes, welcome to our guest, Drisha Kirkman. She's currently the head of Global Program Management and Sustainability at Paymentology, who were Tutuka back in the day. We're very excited to dig deep into that during this conversation. But just thank you, Drisha, for making the time. Thank you for inviting us into your home. And we're really looking forward to chatting with you today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. Yeah, it's been amazing watching you grow. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Let's start with where you come from.
So I grew up in an Indian township in Durban called Isipingo Hills. I went to primary school over there. I went to high school in Amanzimtoti, Kingsway High. Had a bursary into UKZN, so studied at UKZN, BCom Marketing and Management. And at university, I then got a scholarship or more of a cultural exchange program to Germany. So I spent some time in Tübingen University in Germany, and fell in love with the idea of Europe and travel, as does most people our age. Porsche, the home of Porsche and Mercedes, VW, all those things, all those cool stuff is what does back then. And I was like, well, this is it for me. I'm going to move to Germany. But then when I dug into the actual living situation, I mean, you could continue studying, but it was very difficult from a language perspective to continue staying there.
Yeah.
And you'd have to get a job, and then to be able to pay for it without speaking the language was pretty tough.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what's the next best thing I could travel and go to? And of course, it's like most South Africans back then, it's go to London. Go to London town. So instead of doing my honors, I begged my parents to buy me a plane ticket. And back then I had a beaten up old Monza, which I sold, packed up 2 suitcases after graduation, and went to London. No job or anything. I had a cousin there who said, sure, I could come and stay with him and his girlfriend. So I was like, yay, okay, I have accommodation at least.
Yeah.
Get to London. The accommodation turned out to be a hostel.
Oh my word.
So there where I was, a bright and bushy-tailed 21-year-old, never been out of the house. Staying in a hostel in Chelsea. At least I was in Chelsea.
At least you were in Chelsea. At least you were in London.
Yeah,
in Europe, overseas.
I was overseas. It was a thing. My mom and dad get to tell people my daughter's in London.
Yeah.
So little did they know it was me sharing a room with 8 other people.
The details don't matter.
So yeah, that was kind of my first. I get foray into travel, and I probably got to grow up then. So I started taking whatever jobs I could get at the time. So I worked at the gym.
You worked at the gym?
I did.
What did you do at the gym?
At first, I was the receptionist
at
a gym. It was a women's gym, Fitness First for Women. And Crouch End. And I worked my way up to sales. I was selling gym contracts for a while. Then, what else did I do? I did took on a job, and the job description was marketing manager. So I was like, that sounded cool. Went for the interview and stuff. Little did I realize that marketing manager meant door-to-door sales.
Oh my word.
So I was doing door-to-door sales for a while, knocking on small businesses, trying to get them to sign up for a telecom phone service, but it wasn't BT. So it was very difficult.
Yeah.
That didn't last very long. And then eventually I got into quite a cool business, still exists, I guess. It's called The Money Shop. And it did a lot of, like, people would come in to trade, to cash in their checks, and because London used a lot of checks, which was also a bit weird for me, but like a lot of people still use checks there.
Yeah.
And what was the interesting part is they were in partnership with Western Union. So the whole company had a lot of like foreigners. So I met people from all over the world, just working within that company. And then it was my first look into what money transfer looked like. And that was kind of exciting.
How old were you then?
21, 22.
Okay.
So yeah, so I spent the year in London doing this, and finally found a home with some friends in the money shop, and ended up doing some really nice travel, going to Paris and Spain and Netherlands and Belgium and a whole bunch of European countries.
Yeah.
So it was a very nice.
Sounds very exciting.
It was an exciting year. I was poor, but it was a fun time, when a young 22-year-old out of the house, like exploring a bit of the world, seeing different cultures, meeting some interesting people, and And so you want me to continue the story?
It sounds very interesting. Like, what I'm thinking about as you're speaking is that you toured a lot of Europe before you actually traveled across Africa.
100%.
Right? And I'm also thinking at the same time, for a young Indian girl that comes out of Durbs, to be able to do that is quite powerful. It's quite a powerful story, and quite admirable too for many others that will watch your journey and have seen your progression over the years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was like quite a thing, being out of the house, understanding what, like, small things like how to budget, like how to, pay rent, and then realize that you had only X amount for groceries, and how to live alone, and how to
how to do your washing. How to cook your food.
I was like, Mom, I really should have paid attention when you were cooking, because now I'm a little strapped at the moment. It was honestly a year of like real growth for me. I guess learning independence, and getting to see a lot of countries that you probably only see on TV. So it was pretty exciting. Meeting lots of different people, just hanging out and enjoying a little bit of the world, I guess.
Yeah. And what did you study?
So I studied a BCom. So I majored in management, business, and marketing.
Okay.
So
very cool. So
I finished that, but I never got the honors on that because I was busy
traveling
Europe instead.
Okay, so after that stint, I mean, how long did you do that for? You said a year.
A year.
And what brought you back to South Africa?
So I got back to South Africa for something really silly. A boy.
I love this. Let's unpack that. So my husband has the same story. So he also comes from Durban.
Yes.
He was dating this girl. She moved to Joburg. He followed her. And then she moved back to Durban. Luckily he stayed, otherwise we would never have met.
There we go. There we go. And I have, and I knew that story, and I have something really similar in my case. So I mean, before I'd left, I'd had a boyfriend, and it was like, no, we're young, so we're going to explore and all of that. And
I'll wait for you.
He'll wait for me, of course. But like, going towards the end of the year, it was like, no, I thought, this is the man of my dreams. Am I going to be here forever? Probably not. So, I should probably go home. And so I came back to South Africa, and I went to Cape Town because he was there at UCT at the time. And I proceeded to dump me about a month or so into it. So after all of that, I was like, what a waste. So yes, I got dumped like pretty soon after moving back. And then I was like kind of in Cape Town, and then I was like weighing up my options about, you know, where to live. And I didn't really feel like going back to Durban as well. And so I was like, well, Joburg seems like a very nice place to be in, a nice city. And also I'd had that, you know, that real sense of independence. So I also wanted to continue like, you know, kind of being by myself and, you know, just
building something
for myself.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of when I met Rowan.
How did you meet Rowan?
Online. Well, on a telephone first.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so Rowan had advertised for somebody marketing. And I was like, well, yeah, you know, I'd done some sales jobs and like, but I'd seen some of the marketing play and I'd studied it. So yeah, okay, cool. I could do marketing. That's quite easy. He was looking for somebody to rewrite the website of this little startup in Joburg.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was actually applying to KPMG. And so I was going through the KPMG motion, but KPMG takes like months because you have to do the whole biometrics and you have to do a test, a psycho and all of that, and it was in the insurance department.
Oh, so my word.
So I was like, you know, and I'd spoken, and then Rowan had called me up, and I completely lied about some of the experience that I had because I wrote the HTML on my, you know, and he was like asking me about my coding experience because I was like, not quite. But I guess he kind of like liked my confidence of talking nonsense because
you're a great salesperson.
I really was.
I mean,
I was just selling myself, but the truth is, I just wanted to get out of the city and get to another city.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Yeah, come have an interview and stuff." So I was like, "Great." So I'd come up, met him at this dodgy little office, and I was like, I don't think this is
at the garage.
Yeah, like no, a tiny little office, and I met him, and I was like, okay, it's a really small little business. I'd seen it. I was actually seeing a couple of other interviews during that week that I was up here. One in like Pretoria side, and I was like, I'm not going to Pretoria. I'm not going there. And then the KPMG stuff, I was still going through it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take this job in the small company for now.
Yeah.
So
when KPMG comes, then
exactly. So when the KPMG job comes, I'm going to get, So I'll stick this out for like a month or two just so I can go. And plus, it was in the right location. It was exactly where I wanted to. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to take this job. And he also, to his credit, he believed the lies about my coding experience, or pretended that he did. But we all know Rowan.
Yeah. He knew
right then and there that I was talking absolute nonsense and lied on my CV.
Yeah. In his mind, he's probably like, I should be a great salesperson 10 years in advance, lead this whole team,
running. So then I moved to Joburg super quick, 2 weeks later to start in April 6th, 2006.
Sure.
So I joined this little office of 7 people in Rivonia, and he was like, okay, what do we do? And I was so confused. I was like, I have no idea what this little company called Tutuka does.
Yeah.
And then he was like, well, do you ever buy vouchers? And I was like, no, 22 years old. No, not really. Then he's like, okay, well, we do these paper vouchers and all these retailers that use us. And back then it was some nice names like a Musica and Look and Listen, and I used to love music stores. I spent my whole youth sitting in music shops, so for me that was quite cool. I saw the Musica and Look and Listen brands, and then there was paper vouchers that they were printing in shopping centers and all of that. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then so my first job was to rewrite the website of Tutuka to kind of explain. Yeah. So here I was, 22 years old, never written a website in my life, but I'm like,
you must practice your HTML skills.
Practice my HTML skills, which I said I did have. And then write up this website. So I was doing a lot of writing, and that first year, what had happened fairly soon after I joined is that Tutuka formed a relationship with Standard Bank South Africa and Mastercard to issue the first gift card in a shopping center. And the whole thing is that these shopping centers said, we wanted a card, because plastic's better than paper, and we wanted it to work in every single store. So how do you do that? Through an open loop payment mechanism. And so the gift card for shopping centers had launched at that point in time.
And that was 2007?
2006.
2006?
Yeah,
okay.
The very same year. It was already the motions of it had started.
Yeah.
So in 2006, we launched the first shopping centers. And the thing is, because there were only 7 people in the company, it turned into okay, who's available to go out and install a shopping center?
Yeah.
So we kind of ended up doing shopping center installations, support calls, answering questions, you calling merchant services, setting up, carrying the printers to the centers, putting the physical terminals in some of them. Training. So we had to train them on how this is a gift card, this is how you load it.
Yeah.
Back then we offered a service as well that was you go to every single store and you show them the gift card and they sign that they've seen it and know how to swipe it. Which sounds lame, but for me, I actually
you were living your best life.
Because I was living my best life, going to shopping centers around the country.
Yeah.
Going to each and every store.
Because you were traveling, you were doing your vibes away from home.
Exactly.
How old were you then?
22.
Wow.
22, 23.
22, just been dumped. Job of your dreams.
Walking around a shopping center.
Traveling the whole of South Africa.
Yeah.
Sounds like every Indian girl story that ends up in some sort of career trajectory.
Exactly. So when KPMG did call, I was like, no.
Some insurance.
I was like, actually, I don't think this is for me.
Yeah.
Because it was insurance. And I was like, well, I'm seeing shopping centers now. So I loved it. So yeah, that was kind of how the story of Tutuka and my journey at that kind of began. And it was, and this shopping center cards took off. And then from shopping centers, it grew into more of an incentive-based rewards card programs, because a lot of the corporates wanted a way to reward staff. And, they could buy vouchers, or they could issue their own card with their own brand on it.
Yeah.
And so the actual corporate incentive rewards market ended up changing towards these type of card programs, because before that it would all be merchandise. So you'd have to get on a travel portal or get a coffee machine or whatever for your rewards. But here you actually could get real value.
Yeah.
And that's where the real uptick in these cards took off. So we saw it grow everywhere, and big brands came on board. Unilever and Anglo and all of those large companies all started using these cards, and our phones at the office just couldn't stop ringing because people wanted to get cards.
Yeah.
And so I ended up almost selling the card systems, account managing a lot of it, still doing the support calls when it came through. And we spent the next 2 years doing that type of rewards shopping center. Anyone that wanted a piece of plastic that could replace any sort of cash.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, because a lot of them said, well, I want to get cash out of this card because this prepaid card is really cool, but now, there's a limitation of only POS usage.
Yeah.
How do I get cash?
Your actual money. Yeah.
Actual money, it could solve so many things for us. And so in 2008, working with Standard Bank, we launched the first cash card on the platform. And that solved a lot of issues when it came to payroll solutions, microfinancing solutions.
Yeah.
And we won some pretty big deals in terms of the ability of putting a prepaid card in markets to replace cash, but also someone to have the security of a card instead of being able to be paid in cash.
It's trusted.
It's a trusted brand, and it's a MasterCard.
Yeah.
We're backed by a big bank. They could put their brands on it. And it gave people who didn't have bank accounts the ability to actually just get a card that they could use at an ATM, and they could use it at the point of sale. So
That
they didn't
function
have to.
just like one, actually.
Yeah, and then it just so that kind of took off, and even today that's like probably one of the biggest products we have is this pay card program that did really well, and still today is very much relevant, especially in the markets that we operate in the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
So that was the first pay card. In 2010, South Africa had the World Cup, Soccer World Cup. It was a big deal. Everyone was, super excited. And for us, it was at Tutuka, it was especially exciting because we won the deal to do a Visa card at all the stadiums. And
That was the first Visa card, right?
yeah, exactly. We'd never processed or issued a Visa card before. But on top of that, Visa and had signed a deal with FIFA to actually say that, in those stadiums, you cannot use any other brand except Visa.
Yeah.
So there was no MasterCard or China UnionPay or Diners or Amex at the time. So we wanted a deal to do the solution that you could exchange through a machine, you could pay with your MasterCard or your Amex, Diners, all of that, and get a prepaid Visa card that you could use within the stadium and 5 kilometers around the stadium. So yeah, it's very legal. But I mean, it was the first of its kind. And actually, since we did it in 2010, like every Visa sponsored event, they actually do these.
They adopted that approach.
100%. The Olympics, all of that. They now do it where they go cashless.
Yeah.
And then whichever brand wins the entire acquiring piece of that event. So I project managed that, which was really crazy. And
those big yellow kiosks.
yes,
I still remember
the big
it
yellow
in the
kiosks.
office. Yeah.
Exactly. So we worked with manufacturers for the kiosks. We had to do our first Visa installation. We had this whole FIFA team that had landed here for the year preceding. So from 2009, they were all sitting here.
Sounds so exciting.
Camping. Yeah, I mean, it was very exciting. It was a lot of work.
And it was still a small team.
It was a very small team in 2010.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd grown. We were what were we? Closer to 30 people by this point.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think of the scale of what we were doing, it was still a really small team.
Incredible, yeah.
So, Visa was a really strong partner, helping out with the entire solution. And
who was the bank behind that, by the way?
Standard Bank. Standard Bank had done it as well. It was one of their first Visa cards as well. So it was quite a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we ended up doing that event, and it went for the most part pretty smooth. Everyone was very excited. The card was really cool, and it became a souvenir. So people were all over, trying to get a hold of these cards.
Yeah.
So they would just buy.
Hold on to something from their experience.
Exactly, from the experience of the 2010 World Cup. And again, really good experience. We got to go to the different stadiums, do installations, do testing. So yeah, very one of the highlights I think I've had is working on that project, and then of course having the event here and in your home country. Very, very emotional, and you felt a little part of it. You did
purpose, fulfillment, drive, ambition, and also I'm the shit. I mean, those cards, those.
Yeah,
I was
it was very
that.
cool. Those are the cards I did, guys.
Does your mother have a card framed in her cupboard at home or on the wall or something?
I mean, it was to tell your family, it was well, I went to that game because I did this. That I think was the big thing for them.
Yeah.
When we went to the World Cup and I had to go buy us Coke and something to eat.
Yeah.
And they forced me to buy the card. I'm like, hey, this started.
Yeah. In South Africa.
In Johannesburg, in a little office in Ravonia.
Little Tutuka man office.
Yes.
Well, we were called Tutuka, Tukaka,
Tutuka.
Yes. Walk into a room and someone say, hi Tutuka, nice to meet you. Actually, it's Miranda.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm from Tutuka.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, Tutuka was getting a really big reputation by then because, we were the first to do a lot of things, from gift cards, corporate cards, payroll, and then this World Cup card now, and having a Visa relationship. And that ended up serving us really well because, you know, after the World Cup, we got a call from the Visa team to say,
Yeah.
do you guys want to do a card for Orange Botswana? And we'd never done a card outside of South Africa at that point, and Rowan and I were like, yes,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then they were like, okay, can
That's
you...
like, okay, hold on a second. That's like you selling your HTML.
Yes.
You know?
We have no idea how to do it.
That is why you and Rowan was like, I like her.
Exactly, you know.
Say yes now, figure it out later.
Figure it out later.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we did. That was our approach on everything. Everything is yes. You know, I don't know if you guys know, you know, Sean, our CPO back then, our CTO.
Yeah.
He's like, everything is possible.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when and
Yeah.
how. So we were kind of like, yes, we could definitely do it. And they were like, okay, great, come to Orange. So we were like, oh, okay, cool. And we thought we were going to go up to Botswana, you know, just next door, like the 30-minute flight, whatever. And they were like, no, you're coming to
Back to the bougie land.
Yeah, you're coming to Paris. You're going to Paris. And we were like, what? Okay, cool. And then, so luckily, I think for some reason, I had a visa available.
Yeah.
A Schengen, and Rowan was able to also go. But we were like still, you know, our little company, and we weren't like, we didn't have that much money. So our travel was
flying
basically
economy minus.
Economy minus. It's like the cheapest flights you can get into Paris.
This is 16 hours.
16 hours, whatever, you know. It's
Yeah.
like looking at the cheapest Air Ethiopia kind of thing, you know, to get through.
Yeah, I'll take one with all the stops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, we're going there, back off it. So, I mean, and I distinctly remember this. I mean, we'd had like, you know, a 15-hour whatever flights to get via like, I think it was KLM at the time. So
Yeah.
via Amsterdam, wait for the delay, get into Paris. And we land in the morning off the meeting, and we shower in the train station because
Yeah.
we can pay for
Oh my
those
gosh.
showers. So we go to the train station, we showered everything, and we go to Orange, and we like, so we do our like pitch about the cards that we do, and we think it's like, you know, a normal payroll card is what we're doing with the funds on the card. And we like getting this like really blank look out of everybody, and we're like we had like a little bit of a lunch break, and then everyone's like, it's not going so well, and I'm like, I don't think so, hey. So we get back in the room, and they look at us and they're like, okay, we don't want to do what you're saying.
Yeah.
We don't want this.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh,
Okay.
Okay, so what do you want? And they were like, okay, we want to hold
Link it.
we want to hold the balance.
Yeah.
We've got our own systems. We just want the card to access the funds that we're already hosting. And we're like, okay, that's, you know, we've never done anything like that. I mean, the prepaid model back then, this is still 2010 now,
2010,
2010, you know, prepaid model cards are, you know, the card holds the balance, you move funds to the card.
Yes.
And everything sits on the card. But in this model, it was nope, everything sits in a separate store of value, and we just needed the card to access this. And on top of that, they wanted a virtual card. And I mean, you know, you can imagine it's 2010. There aren't exactly too many virtual cards in the world.
Mind you, that was outside of South Africa.
Yes. And so of course we said yes. I mean, you know.
Enter Sean, profile hybrid, shadow.
Yes. And we spent the afternoon just unpacking on a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Rowan drawing it out on a whiteboard exactly what they wanted as a solution. And we said, sure, we'll come back with something. And we spent one night in Paris. And even though I was completely exhausted, 15 hours.
You have to go take your photo.
I have to go walk, you know,
Yeah.
in Paris, of course,
Yeah.
take out as many photos as I could.
Yeah.
Caught a flight the next morning, came back to Johannesburg. My one night in Paris.
Yeah.
And came back to Johannesburg, sat down with Sean, our CTO, and said, Sean,
Yeah. You said anything is possible.
possible. So this is what we need to build.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, we can do something. So, mapped it out with him, wrote out the actual like API within like a week or two at that time, sent it back to Orange and said, there's the solution, you guys keen? And they were like, yep,
Yeah.
let's do it.
And that launched in 2011, right?
No, it took a while, much longer, closer to 2012, 2013, because they needed to get regulatory approval.
And in that period, the whole Atlas Mara deal happened. And KBC.
Exactly. So they hadn't secured. They'd been chatting to their bin sponsors at the time, but didn't secure the deal. But in the meantime, we were still just building quickly in the background.
It'll be ready in like 6 weeks. Roll up.
Exactly. So we wrote out the whole solution, the API and everything before it was ready. Gave it to them, and yes. The good news for us is that it took a bit longer for them to get their approvals and to launch. And when they finally did launch, I mean, it was like, like one of the very first, now what we commonly call like, companion cards in the market. And it happened in Botswana, Africa, which I'm very proud of.
And that's very impressive.
No, absolutely. I mean, it was like, it was a digital card as well. So it was a virtual card. I mean, it had its limits at the time, but it
issued via USSD.
Yes, via USSD. So all these complexities, but for the people of Botswana, it was a card they could spend online. Game changer. Yeah. Something very, very different, unique.
How do you use your mobile money funds outside of a mobile money ecosystem?
100%. Yeah, and it worked. And at the same time, Visa had also called us and said, you know what, we've got this telco in Thailand. Can you come? They want the Orange solution. So there, Rowan and I get on a plane, go to Thailand.
Cheap-ass flights.
Cheapest flight possible. And then, pitched the companion idea. We'd just done it, or like we're working out with Orange.
That's a ready-made product.
It's a ready product, and
sweat the assets.
Yes. And they were like super excited about it, and we spoke to two of their biggest telcos at the same time. It was DTAC and True, and they were both in competition with each other, and they were like. The thing with Asia is, things move really quickly, and they were like, they wanted to be the first to launch a virtual card, and they already had like hundreds of thousands of subscribers within their ecosystem using their wallets that they'd already created. So it was
emerging market use cases. Yeah,
100%. And I mean, there it was like. Not as limited as some of the regulation we'd experienced in Botswana. So it meant that somebody could actually now in Asia without a credit card access the Apple and the Google Play stores and Steam games.
Yeah.
So that was like a massive use case for them. And unfortunately, Visa ended up losing the deal to MasterCard, and we had to do it with MasterCard. We felt really bad because Visa had taken us there.
Yeah.
But
that's happened a few times.
It's happened a few times in my career. But we did end up launching, and that True product is still live today. This was 2014, and it's one of the largest MasterCard issued virtual card program across Southeast Asia, still to date. So yeah, I mean, that was then our foray into the Asian markets, and we kind of realized that there's a large opportunity. We're onto something in Southeast Asia, because I mean they're quite similar to the African continent in some respects in terms of the lack of credit card penetration, the lack of infrastructure. The usage of mobile wallets is prolific over there. People want to have an online experience or asset that they could use. So we thought, this is actually a pretty good market for us. So we did, we formed really strong partnerships with the local MasterCard and Visa teams, and made sure we spoken to the right people that would get us through at least speaking to telcos, because we also realized that telcos were a big area that we could enable quickly. And so and with this companion card model, the wallets and the realization that telcos had such big customer bases, they seemed like a no-brainer in terms of who we would target.
Yeah.
So I mean, Africa and Southeast Asia were big markets in this. So we started targeting MNOs in the region, using our relationships with Mastercard and Visa, speaking to them about digital cards. Virtual cards were the easier one to get before we went into physical. But I mean, a lot of them we also, depending on the market, we pitched physical cards as well. And Tutuka began to grow, and I mean, we just started adding on countries one by one all over
Very
the region.
fast, very quickly.
Very, very quickly.
Yeah. So, I mean, Tutuka is one of those untold, or at least I don't think it's told enough, right? True African success stories. It is South African founded, Africa bred, Africa expanded into the rest of the world, and now has become a mammoth global leading issuer processor, right? What do you think were some of the reasons that the team stuck to non-bank emerging market use cases? Because we know it's complex markets, very gray, unclear, undefined regulatory, licensing requirements, difficult to collaborate with the banks and introduce, like why is a non-bank issuing a banking type of product? The customer behavior is quite different to a banked customer, longer to earn revenues. Why stick to that use case? What was the reason behind it?
I think the fact that we'd come from a place where we knew, unless there's generally like a few strong bank players in the market, but they cannot reach a whole host of people. And if you think about it, I mean, even today, South Africa is considered a very bank market, but we're still very cash heavy.
Yep.
Large disparities. There's large disparities. People don't have access to these type of solutions. And with much respect to the banks, they still have a long way in terms of earning trust of everybody.
Yeah.
They're also mammoths in terms of the technology that they use. It takes them a while to, get traction. And they've never really been able to penetrate the entire spectrum of people. I mean,
that require
access. They're usually in the middle income or the high income space. That low income just kind of gets forgotten. It also doesn't make sense for some of them because of the costs involved in getting them into the environment. And for the people in that specific region, they don't, there's a trust element, there's a costing element.
Yeah.
So for them, for a lot of people, not just them, for a lot of people, they want to have the ability to do payments, but they may not know how to, but also the ease of using something. So what do you trust? I mean, you trust your phone. You have it with you all the time. How that's something that almost everybody has it. I mean, in sub-Saharan Africa as well, the penetration of cell phones is still prolific, and it's the same market dynamics in all emerging markets. Is that phones are still the thing that people will have no matter what.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things that people get when they have a little bit of money.
Yeah.
So it was like, how do we actually access this and target this type of customer base, but give everybody access to these types of solutions? I mean, the one thing about Tutuka, and here's because of sustainability and the cultural part, is that part of our ethos has always been to do good and to help our staff and our communities around us. And the thing with the emerging markets is that we honestly felt that it did help people.
Yeah, change lives through payments.
It changed lives through payments, 100%. We give people to access to things and services that they never had before. So that's why we specifically targeted it, because also there weren't too many people targeting that industry and that market at the time. They'd be the giant international players that would come into the space, and their costing was so off the grid, it would never make sense. The banks didn't have the models to do it. So we thought, why not create a simple to launch solution that could integrate into whatever store of value that already existed, that already had a customer base that people trusted, and do it at a low cost point. So it gave
Build
people,
value around it.
exactly, and do it at a quick, simple, low cost point that would make sense for everybody.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the reason and the ethos behind why we went into that emerging market play.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I just want to pause there for a second, right? Because, like, there's so much, I feel like I could talk to you for hours about the whole Tutuka story, right?
Yes.
There was always something that stood out. And, when I joined the team, it was still fairly small, right? And that was a high growth fintech phase, for us, but we were all taught to become generalists. You walk into a room and the team opposite you has 15 different people from 7 different departments, and you're like one man representing the whole business and every, function behind you. It was also that you at the time were young, female, Indian, South African, walking around with this tall white oak, into Africa, into Asia, what was that journey like for you personally in terms of how you continued to grow in that space, the type of leadership that you were, led under? How did you learn and, so that you were able to pay that forward? Because I really do feel like you do that, and you've done that with me. I mean, when I moved from my account management role into the business development role, I know at that point you were transitioning out, but I wouldn't have made that jump if it weren't for you supporting me through that period, right? So just thank you for that. If I hadn't said thank you before, I really appreciate it, and I hold that very close to my heart. But again, it's this culture that we had created that, just instilled a sense of family, giving back, and how did that translate in your personal life, the way you thought about things, the way you paid it forward, and how did that lead into you now leading their whole sustainability program globally?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why I've been around, been with Tutuka and now Paymentology for so many years, is the culture and the opportunities that people who are of color or young females don't necessarily get.
Yeah.
And I mean, it all starts with Rowan, the founder, taking a chance on someone lying to their CV about HTML.
Or with red hair and bedroom slippers. I keep telling that story.
Exactly, taking a chance on me. And also, allowing us to learn. And at that time, we were all learning how things worked and making up things on the fly. And I guess, as a fintech, you had to do it. But I think, the culture was never a culture of too many layers. It was a very flat structure.
Yeah.
Doors were always open, and titles didn't matter.
Yep.
So it never mattered, what your title was. Backgrounds didn't matter, and we were very conscious about when we hired people, that it was always like diversity, and it was always about giving people a chance. So even if they had like zero payments experience, we would always give people a chance. And like, going around the client, seeing clients with Rowan, and again, when you walk into a room, it can be intimidating.
Of course, yeah.
But the thing that we discovered, and it goes back to that orange discussion, is it's all about asking questions. What does the customer want, right? It's having that engagement of what do you want, drawing it out with them. Sometimes co-creating something, and if you understand your product or what you have, and understand what they're trying to do, the pieces just fit together. And then to the customer, it doesn't matter that you're a really short Indian girl from Durban, South Africa. If you know your stuff and you're able to like engage them in that way, they would really trust you. And it was always about becoming a trusted advisor. This is when we instill into people, you become a trusted
and having
advisor.
a peer-to-peer relationship.
Exactly.
Thank you, Angie Watson.
There
Age doesn't matter.
Age doesn't matter. What you're wearing doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But what you're talking and how you co-create with them. That was the thing that mattered.
Although I have heard stories where I think it was in Asia somewhere, Southeast Asia, in one of your meetings, you rocked up to the meeting, bunch of guys around you, men around you, and they were like smoking. Pakistan. They were like smoking. I'm like, like how was that experience? I mean, I get it, right? And I also know that you walk in there and you will feel intimidated, but you will hold your own. And it's also because Rowan believed in you and he trusted in you and he empowered you, right, to kind of lead something and take charge of something. But in those situations, like, how did you navigate that?
Listen, I've had like some pretty tricky situations, to Bangladesh, arriving through after a terrorist bombing,
I was going to ask Miranda earlier, it would be like, drop a question to Trisha, like, what's your most memorable, hectic experience in travel? And I think I would say the Bangladesh thing.
Yeah.
That was hectic.
Yeah, when we went to Bangladesh, that was fun. Yeah, and I mean, Pakistan was a very, very interesting market as well. So you can imagine being an Indian female hanging out in Pakistan, trying to, launch business there. I would tell
Especially when you twang like that.
That's right.
To them. All of us were twanging.
Yeah, to them, everyone's not speaking. And
Yeah.
it was very interesting because they would ask if I was from India or was, speak Hindi, and I'd say no, I'm not. And explain again the history
I can speak Afrikaans.
Yeah, explain the history of Indian South Africans.
Yeah.
let me give you a small history of 1652. So yeah, Pakistan was really interesting. And you're right. I mean, sometimes you walk into a meeting and you are intimidated. I mean, there's a huge boardroom. And I know which one we're thinking about because they would have microphones like the UN with ask a question and say thank you. Sign off.
Noted.
So yes, I had to sit and go, hello, my name is Drisha. I'm from Tutuka. And everyone would ask the same question. What does Tutuka mean?
What does Tutuka mean?
What does Tutuka mean? For us, I mean, it has a lot of meanings, but we took the meaning of Tutuka being able to grow. So
in Zulu, right?
In Zulu. Mm-hmm. We took the Zulu meaning that it
Did you design the Tutuka man?
I did not. Sean designed the Tutuka man.
Okay.
Yes.
Don't you miss the Tutuka man?
I miss him so much. I miss him a lot. We used to have this joke that if you take the top of a champagne corkscrew and twist it out, it's the Tutuka man. So that's how we designed Tutuka man as a little man from a champagne cork. But
because the team did love bubbles.
We did love bubbles. Yeah. Fridays was bubbles at the office through teacups.
Yeah.
We still call it tea. So we drank champagne out of teacups because we couldn't afford real champagne glasses at the time. So yes, it's always Tutuka tea. But yeah, walking into that, it is really intimidating. But I mean, I think you answered the question. You're absolutely right. I mean, having the experience of understanding the product from scratch and traveling around with someone like Rowan who empowers you to actually say something. Like in some meetings, he'd walk in and he'd say, "I'm not saying anything." So he'd leave it up to you, and so you had to learn. And so in those situations, it was just a matter of explaining the product as best I could, even though there was lots of language issues, cultural issues. But the ability to know your stuff and also just ask them the right questions.
Yeah.
People then eventually forget all those barriers.
Yeah.
If you're speaking their language in terms of what they want.
And you're solving a problem.
You're actually solving a problem. And I mean, Pakistan is a great, example of that. It's a market, again, very similar to ours. Not much bank penetration, big population, no access to digital, no credit card, no online spend. So again, those type, what I have learned is that a lot of countries have a lot of similarities. We think we're in Africa that the rest of the world is so different, but
it's not really.
It's not. The world eventually is is very, very small when you kind of break it down into in terms of what people want, what people need, and how you can have relationships.
What they value.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a fairy tale type story in terms of just that period of growth, right? When Tutuka went from one market to like 50 in a short period of time. But it wasn't always like that. I mean, you know, we had many postmortems, many printing the emails, circling it with a red pen, and you have to answer, or, you know, that thing after a meeting, like, why didn't you say anything? Or before you go into the next meeting, like, don't you dare sit in this meeting and not say anything. That's like the worst thing that you could possibly do, you know?
Absolutely.
And we often think about that. And, you know, even if you take it out of a career or professional context, right? How you live your life, the decisions that you make, it's all guided by upbringing, values in terms of how you brought up, the people that you were surrounded by or influenced by, and that kind of thing. And if you then take those principles and you apply them into a career professional environment, when Prilin and I look back, a lot of the time, it's like we were raised, you know, by a few people, and we were raised through the Tutuka journey, and we hold on to a lot of those core principles in terms of how decisions were made, what the cultural environment was, what is important in terms of leadership and building a team and ensuring punting diversity and inclusion and changing lives and giving people chances. And that's all very important, right? What drives you?
I think, it is a lot of those things. Like, what drives me is the ability to make a difference. So I still believe in the products that we are offering are changing lives. At the same time, I get to, work with people that are culturally different, and again, train up juniors, give them the opportunity to change their lives, their families' lives, and make a real difference to people. And then also, I've had the ability to now build up a sustainability team, and then actually do a lot of community work. So I mean, you've known me and how much I've been trying to do, by myself for many, many years. And then, through the Tutuka journey, we actually were able to create a team and a budget where, we actually get to do real change for people, whether it's through mentorship programs, skills development training, setting up computer labs, even we now have our own little soccer team in Alexandra Township.
That's awesome.
Called Black Poison. There's a punt to my Black Poison team. We support them. It's not just a soccer team, but we actually do meals. So they actually, get a proper meal every single day. They train 5 days a week. So they keep boys off the streets between the ages of 11 and 18. And there's about 66 of them.
Wow. I was introduced you to Ashmita. Do you know Ashmita? Ashmita Singh. She works with Safe Hub, Amandla, and they do these sport infrastructure facilities to keep, boys, children, youth, those communities off the streets. It'd be a great connection. I'll do that for you.
Yeah, 100%.
It'll be interesting for you.
Yeah, no. So I get to do some amazing causes. I have 2 mentees. They're now doing their first year in university, both of them.
From Sizanani?
From Sizanani.
Nice.
Like yourself.
Yeah.
So my kids are now going to be the first in their families to get through university.
Sure, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, my kid, my boy Raymond, he's got a bursary. He's going to be an actuary. So
wow, that is incredible.
Yep, little boy genius there.
Sure.
So yes, I told him one day he's going to pay me one day.
He must mentor your baby.
Yeah, exactly.
One of those Indian moms, you're
gonna take care of me. Exactly. I gave him the speech. You're gonna look after me, pay for me one day.
And where does that come from? It's so incredible to hear how that team has grown and that you've done so much, right? But why did you start? Where does that come from, really?
I think I've always kind of wanted to help people, and I know growing up wasn't always easy for me. I mean, my parents did their best, but I did grow up, in a like pretty average household. Like, my mom was a single mom for a lot of it, so it wasn't like we always had access to these things and access to facilities. And then I guess, the fact that like I'd somehow been very lucky in my life to like sort of land up in these positions. It was always incredible, like the type of luck and opportunity that had happened to me. And then based on that, I'd always wanted to go back and give that opportunity to other people. And so it's always been like something that I'd always wanted to do. So I've been lucky enough that I've been able to do a lot of it.
Yeah, that opportunity, like your whole response in my mind, I'm like, that's the Rowan Juju. Because I feel like it's the same. It's the same thing with us. Like, we always circle back to, that was like the inception of, the way that we think about things or do things and give back and, Yeah, I mean, talking about your mom, and again, when you were just describing that, I'm also thinking about just my own experiences, conversations I've had very recently with, different females in the industry that are also doing really cool things. And very few of them come from privileged backgrounds, and in those conversations, one thing that always comes up is Indian tax, obviously.
Yes.
You always have to take care of your family once you're financially able to, like that first job, first paycheck, until the day that you
are there.
You are there. I mean, what role, just in, when the industry views you, obviously you're a very respected contributor to the industry growth overall. You've done incredible things just in your own career, but also for these different programs that you're describing. And we look at you as a powerful force, right, in the region. What role does your mom play in that? I mean, you spoke about, her being a single mom, but how did that impact your ability to go after things and remain ambitious and, be a strong female powerhouse, basically?
Yeah, and I think, she was very young when she had me, and also very young when she became a single mom. So, she did whatever she could to make sure I had whatever I needed, like, whether it was school supplies or getting into certain programs. So she did her best for me and was always like, you need to be independent and not rely on anyone. I guess it was that sense of instilling in me that you, as a woman, you can do everything and anything. You didn't need a man. You could do it yourself. So I've always been very pro-feminist. And I think that comes from my mom. And she trusted me, surprisingly, with a lot of things. She always trusted me. Like, whatever I said, she let me do. And that's like
move overseas.
Like, not do an honors degree. Because I said, trust me. This is going to be better for me to learn. My learning is going to grow. And help me sell the car, give me some money. I promise I pay you back. And trust me, I've paid it back. I'm still paying it. Still paying for it. So I mean, she always trusted me and gave me the sense of, you can do anything you want to do. Like, there was never a limit. Like, even though we may have not had it as much. I mean, I was always a dreamer. I was always I knew I was going to see the world. Like, in my mind, 14 years old, like, from Isipingo Hills, like, single mom house. But like, in my mind, I was going to Paris. You went very far, I was going to Paris in my mind. And, I guess it was that sense of allowing me to dream, never saying it was going to be impossible, supporting me, helping me when I really needed the money and letting me go. Yeah. So she's been a rock, and she's still there. You still paying for it. You future paying. She never lets me forget about it. And I mean, like, when you look at the industry today and you look at all these founder stories and all these new up and coming fintechs, and you look at the growth of fintech, I mean, like, we always say this, Tutuka fintech before fintech was a thing. Fintech was a thing, way before fintech was a thing. But
when you look at the industry today, like what is your view on it? Like do you think that we're building, and by we're, I don't mean scale specifically, but I mean, the industry. Do you think that we're building, and particularly African founders, do you think that we're building long-term sustainable businesses, or do you think that a lot of fintechs in this space are caught in the hype, right? First part. Second part is, how would you view or compare an African fintech to the likes of a European fintech or American fintech, and their solutions and services, the way they do business, the way they grow? What is our strength?
Okay, so first part of the question. I'm kind of at two minds about the industry as it is, to be blunt.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of new entrants out there. And I think, while some of them are really good and I think will go very far and make a difference, at the same time, there's a lot of these fly-by-nights who are just like, got some money and are like, well, I'll become a fintech.
Yeah.
And, they don't have proper planning or solutions, but, are just trying to get funded, and they see these, international stories and assume, okay, Africa's the next best thing. So absolutely everyone and everybody's calling themselves a fintech right now.
Yeah.
I mean, clients we've had for years, and now suddenly fintechs, it's like a rebrand of the industry. Everybody is a fintech. However, there are such amazing stories coming out. You've seen some of the people we all know that have known for years that have done really well. You're looking at your Makurus and what they've done, the Mama Money team, Yo-Yo, formerly Y Group, all of those guys, they're all fintechs. And it's not that they're fly-by-nights, because people don't realize how long they've been around for.
Yeah.
We've been doing stuff with them for 10 years plus.
Yeah.
And all of them have done like amazingly well, growing into other countries.
One pragmatic step at a time.
Exactly. Yeah. So I have to respect what a lot of them are trying to do out there. And I think that it's going to serve them well in the future. But yeah, there are just, everyone's a fintech these days. Like when people tell me they're a fintech, I'm like, okay.
Even recruitment companies.
Yes.
Fintechs.
Yeah, we've seen that too recently.
Yeah, yes, we know. We all know. So everybody's a fintech. So like, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. But the thing is, and so Tutuka, we had 2 series of investments in 2014 and 2018, and then 2021 was fully acquired by Salt, now Taya, UK based, and the merger happened. And post-acquisition, I was also like, what should I do?
Yeah.
There is no longer Tutuka. Should I start something
And
else?
that was very emotional for a lot of people.
It was for a lot of people.
It was personal.
It was personal. Yeah. It felt like we kind of were giving up a baby at that point in time. It was like
It was the African story.
It was the African story, and I mean, people don't know because we've always been a behind-the-scenes brand.
We back-end plumbers. We're not allowed to even ask the bank for a logo at a launch event, because even if they said yes, we would say no.
Exactly. Yeah. We never put our name out there. We
Yeah.
never spoke about our investments and how well we'd done, and how many countries we'd managed to penetrate by that point.
Yeah.
So by that acquisition time and everything had happened, and then I was also at a crossroads about what should I be doing now, because the Tutuka story was done at that point.
Yeah.
And then I thought very hard about it, and there were lots of options on the table. And then so I chose to kind of stay in South Africa and stay with the team here to run the Africa side, and South Africa in particular, but then growing into other African markets. Because this answers the second part of your question. I mean, why Africa? I still believe that there is so much opportunity on this continent. Yes, the UK, US numbers are huge. They're massive. One deal is like millions of dollars and stuff. But the competition is so heavy in that. And there's just, it's not like a need as such for people as it is in the African context. The need is still here for a lot of these solutions. In the European and the US markets, it's not a need, it's more like an innovation. Okay, cool, something different. But you've got so many options, so many players out there. I think it's very difficult to crack it. I mean, obviously, there are those great stories. Revolut is a good story. But then you have the real issues like a Rails, what happens. So there's still a lot of trouble there. Whereas in the African continent, and I always say this, I still feel like it's a virgin continent. As much as we penetrated into Tutuka, there's still so much opportunity out there, especially in this fintech and especially in the payment space. I mean, we've got a lot of challenges in terms of regulatory and everything we know. The regulation is a lot harder here. Just the banking systems and people are a lot harder to work with. There's this whole push to on soil in every country, which, is a very difficult play. However, the solutions here can make a difference to people. There's still that options for fintechs to be able to penetrate that market, because it's still, the banks are not getting there. It's underserved. Like in every single country, there's like a huge opportunity. I mean, not everyone's going to be Safaricom, and let's be honest. Everyone says, okay, Safaricom. But it's not everyone's going to be Safaricom, but there is a whole other layer of people that you can actually get to. And so that's why I chose to be here and chose to actually do this in Africa.
And I mean, like, you're so right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the first product in a market.
Absolutely.
Because there is such a long journey to walk with that customer or with that program in terms of taking it one step at a time and, packing on additional value, wait for adoption. And once you have that adoption, pack on the next, value proposition, because it enhances the existing product that you've used to retain a customer, and then you're providing them additional access or additional, growth, right? From an experience perspective. And I think that that's also something that sometimes we don't see. And in some cases, I do see that. Like in South Africa, I feel that we are just over-engineering, use cases for people who are already served, where products are working. And it is quite unnecessary, in my honest opinion, to put that effort and attention on just over-engineering products and wrapping it up as a fintech solution,
100%.
As opposed to targeting the disparity, targeting the unbanked, targeting township communities and the informal sector, and getting products into those places where those people are not even participating in the economy, And I think just as an industry as a whole, we should be driving home that point, a lot more solid, as opposed to praising these over-engineered solutions in a market that's what value is it really adding?
Exactly.
And who's paying for that?
Exactly, and 100% agree. And I mean, in a lot of the markets here, it's not the most innovation is not going to win. It's the utilities, like how easy is it to use, and and you're right, it's 100% solving, and you're not going to hit the big thing immediately. You're not Safaricom. Safaricom happened because of a particular reason and time in Kenya.
And they solved a problem.
It was
a particular need. Exactly.
So, like, do you know how many, and I'm sure you get this, do you know how many people come to me and say, I want to be Safaricom? Sure.
Okay.
Let's start at the beginning.
One step at a time.
Yeah. What's your customer? Do you have a customer? I'm going to solve the underbanked. That is the one thing that people say, I'm going to solve with the underbanked. And it's like, South Africa is banked.
Yeah.
It's the actual utility. What are you solving for? It's the use cases.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. We have public transport of taxis, and are you going to get taxi drivers to take a credit card? No, you're not, or a card payment.
Yeah.
Until you solve the actual use cases, like, you can't blanket statement. You're going to do everything at once. Find your niche if you're a fintech.
Yeah.
And then solve in the simplest manner the actual use case.
And I think people often underestimate the actual complexities of the problem. Like you open LinkedIn one day and it's like, okay, the Senegalese government shut down the internet, because of elections. And it's like, okay, but you are trying to push an app with this digital product, like how are they going to access that? You can't control the government shutting down the internet. You know, we have a mega load shedding problem here, and people underestimate the impact it has on the products and services we're providing to customers. Africa is a complex market and it needs complex solutions, but I think you're spot on in terms of, you know, find your niche and dominate it, because then you're truly solving, and then you take that and you deploy it in the next market, because that's what works.
That's what works. Proven recipe. You make it work in one space, then take it to the next. Don't blanket approach. Blankets don't work here.
Yeah, no.
And it's, as you say, Africa is a different beast. There's never a dull moment in Africa between our regulators and governments and banks. Never a dull moment. So
never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment. So it's always interesting.
What are you looking forward to? You know, we're in March. It is International Women's Month. I'm sure you've got some cool things planned. But what's exciting you about, you know, what you're seeing in the region and some of your next steps, both personally but also within now Paymentology?
So I think, you know, from a region-specific and fintech space itself, I think it is an exciting time because, as I said, there's just so many fintechs out there, and there's so many things happening in terms of the market growth and people trying to do some form of solutions. And as much as we give, like, you know, our government and, you know, lots of governments flack, I think governments are also waking up to the idea of digitization and the ability of trying to, as strict and rigorous as they are, yes, there's actually you know, some nice opportunities I've particularly seen where they've coming to the party to say we need to actually, you know, control this better by putting in proper solutions. And so I think that is quite interesting, and it's not just in South Africa. I've seen it happen in the other markets where the governments are mandating certain things around how grants are paid out, where it has to be digitized. So there's not, there's you know, there's a lot of corruption, as everyone knows. So if they are serious about it, and some markets are getting serious about it, then there's that move to digital solutions. And then you can see some of the giants are coming into these markets. You know, Amazon opening up in Cape Town. You're seeing Google Hub coming in.
What do you make of that?
I think it's interesting. Look, I think it's good because it shows that they see the need in these continents, and they can see that it's going to be the future of where a lot of spend will happen. And I mean, you know, I've been listening to a lot of economists as well about, you know, the future of the world. And the thing is, when it comes to population and Africa having a very young population, when it comes to the future, a lot of the workforce is going to come from this continent. So those companies, big companies that are coming in early, are taking the risk that this is going to be the next best thing for it, because a lot of the first world is saturated, their populations are aging, so a lot of the workforce is coming from here. So I think, you know, that's why they're coming in, they're taking the leap and the risk of it, which I think will serve them in the future. And then for all of us that are still here in the continent, I think it's a good thing. It just opens it up a bit more. It will encourage the reduction on pricing of a lot of things over here, because there are some monopolies at play. So it just makes it a more free market. So everybody will end up benefiting. Of course, it'll make it difficult for a lot of local players as well that have had monopolies. But I mean, you know, the world is changing, free markets.
And to be honest with you, I think that the market size and the need of the continent is large enough for a couple players to play in, you know, and still do really well, so long as they are solving problems, you know, making things easier, simpler, more convenient, accessible. I mean, not just in our space, but in various other spaces, which we see, you know, all of these developing use cases and developing business and, you know, new entrants and the adoption of AI and the introduction of AI in some other places, you know, and it's all about how we as a people evolve. And with that evolution, our needs evolved and use cases evolve. And, you know, I think that over time, there's a lot in store for this region, but also, like, don't get it wrong. there's a lot for the world to learn from us in terms of how we've, been able to, hopefully one day in future we can say we did something different.
Yeah.
And we got it right, which is really cool. So Drisha, as we wrap up, I mean, there's also a lot of young professionals in this environment, right? There's a very cool curiosity but interest to move into this fintech payment space because it's just growing so rapidly, and it has been for quite some time, and it will continue to do that. What's your advice for young professionals who are, either inside of their organizations looking to grow and take big leaps and learn more and, take some risks, but also to those that are wanting to follow a passion or dream, step out of their jobs and start a business? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I'd say, be hungry. So be hungry about, what you want to do and ambitious about it. But at the same time, like we've been speaking, find your niche. Just don't do something for the namesake of I'm doing it by myself, or I want to be a CEO now because I've been in something for, years. Because if you have a good enough idea, it'll work. So, I mean, the idea's got to be there. Stay true to what you want to do, or stay true to the idea. It may not change the world tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if it is going to change the world, then you got to keep at it, and it's going to take time. Everything doesn't have. People read these one in a million stories and assume it's an overnight success. I'm going to get funded next
tomorrow.
month.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I opened my business today. I'm going to get funded in 2 weeks, and I'm taking over Amazon. I'm going to be the world. But, it doesn't happen like that.
No.
It is a journey. So be prepared for the hard knocks. Be prepared to stick it out, because there will be hard times. But if your head and your heart are in the right place, then you've got something. That's what I would have to say. I mean, it is a really fun environment to be in. It's ever changing.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of change. If you're like somebody who's quite regimented and doesn't believe in change, then this is not the space for you.
Yeah.
So you have to
work for a bank. You
work
mean?
for a
I'm
bank.
sorry.
Yeah. Exactly. So you gotta.
I'm joking. I love the banks.
Or a network.
We love the
We
network.
love the network.
No, I love that advice. I mean, we have Sineshni in the room today. She's just joined our team very recently. Also, brown girl from Pietermaritzburg. She's a makeup artist by profession, studied somatology, and now she's in the big cool world of fintech and going to help us do big things as scale. But thank you very much for your time. It's been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And just, it's also been a really great journey with you. I do think that we need a part 2, because we didn't talk about the fact that I married somebody I met at Tutuka and nobody knew until we got engaged. Because that's an achievement for me, it's so great. But yeah, thanks very much, and I hope you enjoyed this. And
thanks for having me. It's always great catching up with you guys, and I'm really excited about what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
And congratulations on taking the leap. And again, I know the hard work will pay off. So
thank you.
Good luck, guys.
Thanks so much.